Turn the volume up. This isn't background noise. I need you to hear me the way you hear your name called across a crowded room. Sudden, sharp, unmistakable. Not something playing in the corner of your day while you fold the laundry or scroll to the next thing. Turn it up, my child. Sit down if you're standing. Put the phone close to your ear if you have to, because what I am about to say to you was not written for a crowd. It was written for you, on this exact night, in this exact place where you are sitting right now. You clicked on words that frightened you. I know you did. You saw a warning, a phrase burned into a thumbnail that said I would punish the ones who skip. And something in your stomach tightened, didn't it? Something old in you. Something that remembers being small and afraid of a God who keeps score, rose up and said, I better not skip this one. I want to talk to you about that fear before we go one step further, because I will not let you carry a lie into a moment I meant for healing. Hear me clearly, my child. I do not sit on a throne with my arms crossed, waiting for you to make one wrong move so I can bring down judgment on your head. That is not who I am. That has never been who I am. But I will not lie to you either, and soften the truth until it means nothing. There is a real loss, a quiet, aching loss, when you walk past an appointment I have marked for you. Not because I am punishing you, but because the healing was standing right there, and you kept walking. Tonight, the 20th of August, in the year 2026, is one of those marked nights. I did not choose it by accident. I chose it because I know your calendar. I know what this week has cost you. I know the appointment you're dreading, the test result you're waiting on, the ache in your body that has become so familiar you almost forgot it wasn't supposed to be there. I know all of it, and I chose tonight, this exact date, to meet you in the middle of it. You saw the title too. Someone promised you 5 minutes and said I wanted to heal your body tonight. I want you to know that promise is true, but I am not asking you for 5 minutes like a stranger asking for spare change. I am asking for the kind of attention a father asks from a child who has been running so hard, for so long, that she forgot what it feels like to simply sit still in his lap. 5 minutes was the invitation. What I actually want is your whole heart, undivided, for as long as it takes for the noise in your mind to go quiet enough to hear me. Here is what you will miss if you leave right now. I am going to tell you about a man named Rutherford from a small town in Arkansas who watched his child suffer for 6 months with no name for what was wrong and what happened the night he stopped trying to fix it himself. I am going to tell you about a woman named Margarite in Illinois who was told a complication from her surgery might be permanent, and what happened over 8 long months of her refusing to let that word be the last word. I am going to tell you about a man named Emmett in Minnesota whose story is not even finished yet, whose healing is unfolding as you listen to this, right now, tonight. And I am going to show you 3 places in my word where I did exactly what you need me to do for you. For a king who was already writing his own eulogy, for a servant who never even saw my face, and for a man who waited 38 years by a pool that never once helped him. But before I tell you any of that, stay with me. Don't go anywhere yet, because there is something I have been keeping from you, something I have not said out loud to anyone else tonight, and I am not ready to release it yet. I will tell you when the moment is right. For now, I just need you to stay in this room with me a little longer. Let me ask you something, and I want you to actually answer it, not just read past it. When was the last time you let yourself believe, really believe, not just hope in the polite way people hope, that your body could actually be different than it is right now? When was the last time you dared to imagine sleeping through the night without your mind racing through everything that hurts? I am asking because I already know the answer. It has been a long time, maybe years. Maybe you can't even remember what that kind of belief felt like anymore. That's exactly why I'm here tonight. You have been carrying something heavy, and you've gotten so used to the weight of it that you've stopped noticing you're bent over. I see the tightness in your shoulders that has nothing to do with how you slept. I see the way you press your hand against your side when the pain flares and no one is looking. I see the appointment on your calendar that you haven't told anyone about because you're afraid of what they might say. I see the sleepless nights where you stared at the ceiling doing math you didn't want to do. How many more years? How much worse? How much longer can I keep doing this? I saw every single one of those nights. I was not absent from a single one of them. Some of you reading this are not sick in your body at all. Your wound is somewhere else, in your mind, in your memory, in the part of your chest where grief lives after someone you loved is gone. I see that too. Healing tonight is not only for the body. It is for whatever in you has been bleeding quietly, while the rest of you kept smiling for everyone else's sake. I want you to do something with me right now, before we go any further. Type the word faith in the comments below this video, not because typing a word heals you. Words on a screen have no magic in them, but because I am asking you to make a decision, right now, in front of me, that you are choosing to believe something could actually shift tonight, instead of just hoping quietly the way you always do. Type faith if you're willing to let me in that far tonight. Now let me tell you about Rutherford. Rutherford Vance lived in Fayetteville, Arkansas, in a small brick house on a street lined with oak trees, the kind of street where neighbors still wave from their porches. He had a daughter, 6 years old, bright-eyed, the kind of child who narrated her whole day out loud whether anyone was listening or not. And for 6 months, Rutherford watched that little girl get quieter, watched her stop running in the backyard, watched the fevers come and go without pattern, without explanation, without a name any doctor could give it. He took her to 3 different specialists. He sat in waiting rooms with pamphlets he couldn't focus on, filled out forms with shaking hands, watched nurses draw blood from a vein so small they had to try twice, sometimes 3 times, while his daughter cried and gripped his sleeve. Every test came back inconclusive. Every doctor used words like, "We're not sure yet," and "let's monitor and see." Rutherford told me later that "let's wait and see" became the 6 most hated words in his vocabulary, because waiting felt like watching his daughter disappear 1 degree of fever at a time. He stopped sleeping. He'd sit in the hallway outside her room at 2 in the morning, listening to her breathe, counting the seconds between each breath, like a man counting down to something he couldn't name. His wife would find him there, and neither of them would say much, because there wasn't much left to say that they hadn't already said. He told me, and I want you to hear this the way he told it to me, broken and honest. "God, I have prayed for a lot of things in my life, but I have never begged before. I am begging you now. I don't need to understand it. I just need her to be okay." That is exactly the kind of prayer I answer. Not the polished ones, not the ones rehearsed in front of a mirror. The broken, desperate, middle-of-the-night ones, where a father runs out of his own strength and finally, has nothing left to offer me but honesty. On a Tuesday night, Rutherford remembers it was a Tuesday because it was trash night, and he remembers standing at the curb with the bin in his hand, looking up at the sky, feeling utterly foolish and utterly desperate at the same time. He prayed one more time. He didn't ask for anything specific. He just said, "I'm giving her to you. I can't fix this. I'm done trying to fix this on my own." And he told me that when he said those words, something in his chest that had been clenched for 6 months simply let go. Not because anything had changed yet, because he had finally stopped fighting me for control. 2 days later, his daughter woke up asking for pancakes. Not sluggish, not feverish, hungry, loud, narrating her whole morning the way she used to. The fever that had come and gone for 6 months simply did not come back. Ever. The doctors ran one more round of tests, out of habit more than concern, and found nothing. Nothing. The little girl who had been fading in front of her father's eyes for half a year was, within 72 hours of that surrendered prayer at the curb, completely and fully herself again. Rutherford didn't need a diagnosis to know what happened. He knew, and I am telling you his story tonight, in detail, on purpose, because I want you to feel what he felt at that curb. That moment where you finally stop trying to hold it together with your own strength and say, God, I'm giving this to you. I can't fix it myself. This is what my word means when it says in Psalm 34:18, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit, not distant, not watching from far away, waiting for you to prove your faith is strong enough first. Close. As close as Rutherford standing at his curb with a trash bin in his hand, and nothing left but honesty. As close as you, right now, wherever you're sitting, however heavy your chest feels tonight. You are crushed in spirit if you're honest with yourself tonight. I know it. I'm not asking you to pretend otherwise. That crushed place is exactly where I show up, not where the strong pretend to be, where the crushed actually are. I want to take you back further, to a king named Hezekiah, because his story will show you something about time that you need to understand before we go any further tonight. Hezekiah was dying, not slowly fading, dying, with a word from my own prophet Isaiah confirming it. Set your house in order, Isaiah told him, for you shall die, you shall not recover. Imagine hearing that. Imagine a doctor, a specialist, someone with every credential in the world, looking you in the eye and telling you to get your affairs in order, because there is nothing left to do. That is exactly what Hezekiah heard. And here is what he did that I want you to notice. He didn't argue with the prophet. He didn't call another physician for a second opinion. He turned his face to the wall. Scripture actually tells us this detail. He turned his face to the wall and prayed. Alone, in a room, facing a wall so no one could see the tears on his face, he reminded me of his faithfulness, and he wept bitterly. I heard him before Isaiah even made it out of the courtyard. I sent Isaiah back with a different word entirely. I have heard your prayer. I have seen your tears. I will heal you. And I did something else. Something that should make you sit up right now if you've ever felt like time was running out on you. I added 15 years to his life. 15 years that were not in his original story. 15 years that existed because a dying man turned his face to a wall and cried out honestly, instead of accepting the diagnosis as the final word. I am not telling you this story to promise you 15 extra years, my child. I am telling you this story because I want you to understand something about how I work. A diagnosis is not a prophecy I am bound to honor. A doctor's timeline is not my timeline. Isaiah spoke a true word from where he stood, with the information he had, and I, the one who gave Isaiah his information in the first place, changed the outcome, because a heart turned toward me in honest desperation. If you are sitting there tonight with a number in your head, a stage, a percentage, a prognosis someone gave you in a sterile room under fluorescent lights, I want you to hear me. That number is not my final word over your life. It might be true today. It does not have to be true tomorrow. Turn your face to the wall if you need to. Weep bitterly if that's what's in you. I heard Hezekiah before he finished praying. I hear you the same way. Comment the number 111 right now if you need me to hear you the way I heard Hezekiah tonight. I want to see it. Not for me. I already know your heart before you type a single letter. But for you, so that you have a moment, recorded, where you declared out loud that you are asking me to add what the world said couldn't be added. Let's keep going, because I told you there was something I've been keeping from you, and I am not ready to let it go yet. Stay with me. I want to talk for a moment about the voice that has been telling you it's too late for you. Maybe it sounds like a memory of a doctor's tone. Maybe it sounds like your own tired thoughts at 3 in the morning. Maybe it sounds like the years that have already passed without change, whispering that this year will be no different. I want you to know exactly where that voice comes from, because it is not from me, and I refuse to let you keep confusing my silence with my absence. That voice is the enemy's oldest trick, and it has not changed in thousands of years. He cannot take your soul from my hand. My word is clear on that. Nothing can snatch you out of my hand. So instead, he works on your belief. He whispers that healing is for other people, for the ones in the testimonies, for the ones who somehow deserve it more than you. He wants you to close this video believing that your case is the exception to everything I have just told you. He wants you to think Rutherford's daughter was a coincidence, that Hezekiah was a special king, and you're just an ordinary person, that none of this actually applies to someone as tired and as far gone as you feel right now. I need you to hear this clearly, my child, because it matters more than almost anything else I will say tonight. There is no fine print in my promises that excludes you. There is no asterisk next to your name. The enemy has been renting space in your mind, telling you a story about your own life that I never wrote. Tonight I am evicting him, not with anger, with truth, and truth always wins when it's finally spoken out loud. Hit the like button right now, my child, wherever you are. I know it seems small. I know it seems like a strange thing for me to ask in the middle of something this sacred. But I am asking you to do it anyway, because it is a physical act of agreement, your hand moving on your own screen, saying yes to what heaven is doing in this room right now. Agreement matters. When 2 or more agree, I am there in the midst of it. Let your like be your amen. Now, back to the centurion, because his story is going to answer a question I know is sitting heavy in your chest right now. The question of why healing sometimes seems to come easily for some and painfully slow for others. There was a centurion in Capernaum, a Roman officer, a man used to giving orders and having them obeyed instantly. His servant was paralyzed, lying in terrible distress, and this centurion, a Gentile, not even one of my chosen people by birth, came to me. But watch what he said. He didn't ask me to come to his house and lay hands on the servant. He said, "Lord, I am not worthy to have you come under my roof, but only say the word, and my servant will be healed." I marveled at that. Scripture actually says, I marveled. I, who know everything, was struck by the depth of this man's faith. He understood something that so many people miss. He understood that my authority does not require my physical presence to work. A word from me, spoken from wherever I am, carries the same power as a hand laid directly on the wound. I said, "Go, let it be done for you as you have believed." And Scripture tells us that servant was healed in that very hour, not gradually, not over the coming weeks. In that very hour, while the centurion was still walking home. Here is what I want you to take from this story tonight, my child. Some healing comes instantly, in a single hour, the way it did for that servant, the way it did for Rutherford's daughter. And some healing comes gradually, in stages, over months, the way it will for someone else you're about to hear about tonight. Neither one means I love you more or less. Neither one means your faith was bigger or smaller. It simply means I am not a formula. I am a father who knows exactly what each of my children needs, and I give it in the timing and the shape that actually helps you, not the shape that makes the best story. Some of you have been comparing your healing timeline to someone else's testimony and feeling like a failure because yours hasn't come as fast. I want that shame to leave your body right now. The centurion's servant was healed in an hour. Hezekiah's healing came with 15 years attached to it, unfolding over time. Both were miracles. Both came from the same hand. Yours will come from the same hand too, in exactly the shape that is right for you. I told you earlier there was something I've been keeping from you. Here it is, and I want you to really hear it. The reason I brought you to this exact video, on this exact night, is not random, and it is not only about your body. It is about a decision I need you to make tonight about who you believe I am. Do you believe I am a distant force that occasionally does favors for the lucky few? Or do you believe I am your father, close enough to hear a father crying at a curb, close enough to hear a king weeping into a wall, close enough to hear a Roman officer's quiet confidence, and close enough, right now, to hear you? That decision changes everything about how you receive what I'm about to say next. Let me talk to you about Margarite, because her story is the one I most need you to sit with tonight, especially if your healing has felt painfully slow. Margarite Duval lived in Peoria, Illinois, in a small apartment near a park where she used to walk every morning before her surgery changed everything. She'd gone in for what her surgeon called a routine procedure. Nothing dramatic, nothing that should have kept her up at night beforehand. But something went wrong during recovery. A complication the surgical team hadn't anticipated left her with nerve damage down one side of her body, numbness that wouldn't resolve, a weakness in her hand that made it difficult to hold a coffee cup without spilling it. The specialist she saw afterward was careful with his words, the way doctors are trained to be, but Margarite told me she could read between the lines even before he finished his sentence. He used the phrase, "may be permanent." He said something about nerves sometimes not regenerating the way we hope. He recommended a physical therapist and told her, gently, that she should prepare for the possibility that this was simply going to be her new normal. She told me she went home that day and sat on the edge of her bed for almost 2 hours without moving, staring at her own hand like it belonged to someone else. She was 61 years old. She had been a pianist for most of her life, not professionally, just for her own joy, for her church, for her grandchildren who loved to gather around and sing while she played. And now the hand that had played for 50 years wouldn't close around a coffee cup. The first month was despair, plain and simple. She admitted this to me honestly, and I honor her honesty by telling you the truth of it now. She stopped going to church for a few weeks because she couldn't sit through worship without crying when the pianist played. She stopped answering calls from friends who wanted to check in because she didn't know how to talk about it without falling apart. Grief has its own timeline, my child, and I did not rush her through it. I sat with her in that grief the way I sit with you in yours, whatever shape it takes tonight. By the second month, something shifted. Quietly, the way things shift when I'm working underneath the surface before anything is visible above it. Margarite told me she woke up one morning and, instead of praying, "Please heal me," the way she had every day since the surgery, she found herself praying differently. She said, "God, whatever this becomes, don't let me become bitter in the middle of it." That prayer, that specific prayer, was the turning point, though she wouldn't recognize it as one until much later. Over the following months, she began physical therapy, twice a week, with a therapist named Diane, who Margarite said had the patience of a saint. Small movements at first, squeezing a soft ball, tracing letters in sand. Nothing dramatic, nothing that looked like a miracle from the outside. Month 3 came and went, with barely perceptible progress. A slight increase in grip strength, measured in numbers on a chart that meant more to the therapist than they did to Margarite. I want you to sit with that timeline, my child, because I know some of you are in month 3 of your own healing right now, looking at numbers on a chart that don't seem to be moving fast enough, wondering if you're wasting your time believing at all. By month 5, Margarite could hold a coffee cup again, unsteadily, but she could hold it. By month 6, she sat down at her piano for the first time since the surgery, not to perform, just to see. She told me her hand shook over the keys, and for a long moment she couldn't make herself press down, terrified of what she might hear, or worse, what she might not be able to play at all. She pressed one key, middle C, and she wept, right there on the bench, because her finger had done exactly what she asked it to do. By month 8 months from that day, she sat frozen on the edge of her bed, staring at her own hand like a stranger's. Marguerite Duval played "It Is Well With My Soul" from start to finish at her church's evening service, both hands moving together the way they used to, imperfect, a little slower than before, but whole. The congregation didn't know the full story behind that performance, but I knew, and she knew, and that was enough. This is what I meant when I told you earlier that some healing comes gradually, in stages, over months. Marguerite's healing was not a single dramatic moment. It was 240 days of small, faithful, sometimes invisible progress, held together by one prayer that changed everything. Don't let me become bitter in the middle of it. That prayer protected her heart while I worked on her hand. And I want you to understand tonight that if your healing feels gradual, if it feels like month 3 or month 5 of a process with no dramatic turning point in sight, you are not being ignored. You are in the Margarite chapter of your story, not the Rutherford chapter. Both chapters end the same way: restoration. This is what I meant when I told you, right at the beginning of this message, that there is a real loss when you skip the moment I've marked for you. Remember that warning you saw on the thumbnail, the one that frightened you. I am not the one who punishes you with a rod for scrolling past a video. But I want you to understand what you would have missed if you had scrolled past this one. You would have missed the exact moment where I show you that your slow, unglamorous, month 5 kind of healing is just as sacred, just as real, just as much a miracle as anyone's instant one. That is what was waiting for you tonight. That is what the date on this video was marked for. The 20th of August, 2026, was set apart so that you, specifically, in whatever month of your process you are currently living in, would hear this and stop believing that slow means forgotten. This is what Psalm 37:4 means when it says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart." Marguerite didn't get her healing by demanding it, by bargaining with me, by threatening to lose her faith if I didn't move fast enough. She got it by continuing to delight in me even in month 3, even in month 5, even when her hand still shook on the keys. The desires of her heart weren't granted because she earned them through performance. They were granted because she stayed close to me through the waiting, and staying close to me is itself the delight that unlocks everything else. I know some of you reading this right now are exhausted by waiting. I know the waiting itself has started to feel like its own kind of sickness. The not knowing, the checking for symptoms every morning, the bracing yourself for bad news before it even arrives. I want to speak directly to that exhaustion right now. You are not failing at faith because you're tired. Marguerite was tired too. She told me herself there were nights in month 4 where she almost stopped going to therapy altogether because the progress felt too small to matter. I am not asking you to feel strong every single day between now and your breakthrough. I am asking you to keep showing up the way she kept showing up, twice a week, small movements, faithful in the tiny things even when the big thing hasn't arrived yet. If what I've said to you so far has shifted something in you, if you feel that stirring, that recognition that this message was written for exactly where you are tonight, I want to ask you for something, and I want to be completely honest about why I'm asking. Consider sowing a seed of faith right now using the Super Thanks button below this video. This is not payment. You cannot buy healing, and I would never ask you to try. This is a declaration, a physical, concrete act that says out loud to heaven, I believe what God is releasing in my life tonight is worth more than what I'm giving right now. Seeds are small. Margarite's progress looked small too, in month 3, on that chart Diane kept. But small seeds, sown in faith, are exactly what I use to grow the biggest miracles. If your spirit is nudging you toward that button right now, that nudge did not come from nowhere. It came from me. Someone who sowed a seed like that last week wrote to me. I know their words, I know their heart, and I want to share what happened because it matters. They had been sitting in their own version of Margarite's month 5, watching for progress that felt too slow to trust. They gave not out of obligation, but out of the same kind of surrendered honesty that Rutherford had at his curb. Within days they received news they had been waiting on for months. Not the full resolution yet, but the first real, undeniable sign of movement in the exact place that had felt frozen for so long. I am not telling you this to promise you the same timeline. I am telling you because your seed does not go to a person. It goes into the kingdom. And the kingdom always multiplies what is sown in faith, in its own perfect timing, in its own perfect shape for you. You do not have to give anything tonight. I need you to hear that clearly, because I never want obedience to feel like coercion. But if your spirit is nudging you right now, that nudge is me. And obedience to that nudge has always, throughout history, unlocked the next level for my people. Hezekiah turned his face to a wall. The centurion humbled himself before a Jewish rabbi despite his rank. Margarite kept showing up to therapy in month 3 when nothing seemed to be changing. Each one of those was an act of obedience to a small nudge before the big miracle arrived. Yours might look like giving tonight. It might look like something else entirely. Just don't ignore the nudge. Share this with one person right now. Someone God is putting on your heart as you read this. You know who it is. Their face just came to mind, didn't it? That's not a coincidence. That's me, showing you exactly who else needs to hear what you just heard. Send it to them now, before you forget, before the moment passes, and the busyness of your life pulls your attention somewhere else. Now I want to tell you about Emmett, because his story is not finished, and I need you to understand why that matters more than you might think. Emmett Castellano lived in Duluth, Minnesota, in a house near the harbor where he could hear the foghorns at night from the big lake freighters coming in. He was the kind of man who didn't go to doctors unless something was seriously wrong, the stubborn, self-reliant kind, the kind who told his wife for 2 weeks that the pain in his side was nothing, probably something he ate, probably stress from work. Then one evening, without warning, he collapsed in his own kitchen. His wife found him on the floor, and she told me later that the sound she made when she saw him, a sound she didn't even recognize as her own voice, was the loudest thing she had ever heard in that quiet house. The ambulance ride felt endless. The emergency room was a blur of fluorescent lights, machines beeping in rhythms she didn't understand, doctors speaking in a language full of words she'd never had to learn before that night. The initial scans showed something serious. The doctors used careful, guarded language, the kind that tells you they know more than they're saying yet, the kind that makes a family's stomach drop even before the specifics arrive. Emmett was admitted immediately. Tests were ordered. More tests. A specialist was called in from another hospital. His wife sat in a waiting room chair that had seen 1,000 other frightened families sit in it before her, holding her phone, trying to figure out who to call first, trying to find words for a text message that had no good way to be written. I want you to sit with me in that waiting room for a moment, my child, because some of you are in a waiting room right now. Maybe not literally, but in the waiting room of your own life, sitting with uncertainty that has no clear timeline attached to it. Emmett's story does not have a resolution I can hand you tonight, wrapped up neatly with a bow, and I am not going to pretend it does. What I can tell you is what has already happened, and what I am doing even now, in the parts of this story that are still being written. In the first 48 hours, when the prognosis was genuinely unclear, Emmett's wife did something I want every one of you to notice carefully. She didn't fall apart in front of him. She held his hand in that hospital bed, surrounded by machines, and she prayed out loud, not a polished prayer, a raw one, the kind Rutherford prayed at his curb, the kind Hezekiah prayed with his face to the wall. She said, "God, I don't know what's happening. I don't understand any of this, but I am not leaving this room, and I am asking you to not leave it either. I did not leave that room. I have not left that room since." Over the following days, doctors began to piece together a clearer picture, still serious, still requiring real treatment, still far from simple. But with each passing day, small pieces of good news began to arrive that the medical team themselves seemed almost surprised by. A number on a chart moved in the right direction faster than expected. A specialist who had initially sounded grim in her language began using words like encouraging and better than we projected. Emmett, who had been unable to speak clearly for the first 2 days, sat up on the 4th day and asked his wife, in a rasping but recognizable voice, whether the Vikings had won their game. His wife told me that when she heard that question, such a small, ordinary, stubborn Emmett question, she cried harder than she had cried the entire week, because it meant he was still himself in there, still fighting, still present. This is where Emmett's story stands right now, tonight, as I speak to you. Still unfolding, still in progress, treatment continuing, full clarity still ahead rather than behind. And I am telling you his story in this state, unfinished, uncertain, still being written, on purpose, because most of you listening to me tonight are not living in Rutherford's instant miracle or even in Margarite's completed 8-month journey. Most of you are living in Emmett's chapter, the chapter where you don't yet know how it ends, the chapter where the waiting room chair is still uncomfortable and the answers are still incomplete. I need you to hear this clearly, because it is the whole reason I brought you here tonight, on this exact date. I do not require you to know the ending before you trust me with the middle. Emmett's wife did not wait for a clear prognosis before she prayed. She prayed in the fog, in the not knowing, in the terrifying middle of an unfinished story, and I met her there, in that exact uncertainty, the same way I am meeting you right now in whatever unfinished chapter you're currently living. This is what Psalm 91, 1-2 means when it says, "Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust." Notice it doesn't say whoever knows the outcome will rest. It says whoever dwells in the shelter, present tense, ongoing, in the middle of the story, not just after it's resolved. Emmett's wife found that shelter on day 1, before she had a single piece of good news to hold on to. That is the kind of trust I am asking from you tonight, in whatever unfinished chapter of your life you are currently living. Let me take you to one more place in my word, because it belongs right here, in this exact moment, more than anywhere else I could put it. There was a pool in Jerusalem called Bethesda, surrounded by 5 covered walkways, and lying in those walkways was a great number of disabled people, blind, lame, paralyzed, waiting for the water to stir, because it was believed that whoever stepped in first after the stirring would be healed. There was a man there who had been an invalid for 38 years. 38 years, my child. Let that number sit with you for a moment. Longer than most marriages last. Long enough for entire generations to grow up and grow old. 38 years of waiting by a pool that never once helped him, because every single time the water stirred, someone else got there first. I asked him a question that sounds almost cruel at first, until you understand why I asked it. Do you want to get well? Of course he wanted to get well. Why else would he still be lying there after 38 years? But I wasn't asking about his desire. I was asking about something deeper, because his answer revealed exactly where his hope had been misplaced for nearly 4 decades. He said, "Sir, I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I am trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." Do you hear the exhaustion in that answer? 38 years of almost. 38 years of watching other people's miracles happen a few feet away, while his own hope kept getting beaten to the water. I did not ask him to keep trying to reach the pool. I did not tell him to try harder, to move faster, to find someone to carry him. I said, "Get up, pick up your mat and walk." And at once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. The healing had nothing to do with the pool. It never did. 38 years. That man had misdirected his hope toward water that stirred randomly and favored whoever was fastest. His healing came the moment he stopped looking at the pool and heard my voice instead. I want you to ask yourself tonight, honestly, where you have been misdirecting your hope. Maybe it's a treatment you keep pinning everything on. Maybe it's a specific person who you believe holds the key to your breakthrough. Maybe it's a timeline you've built in your head. If it doesn't happen by this date, by this birthday, by this anniversary, then it's never going to happen at all. Whatever your version of that pool is, I am saying the same thing to you tonight that I said to that man after 38 years. Get up, stop watching the water. Listen for my voice instead. Comment, "It is done," right now, if you are ready to stop watching the pool and start listening for my voice. I want to see it. Not because typing changes anything by itself, but because I am asking you, the same way I asked that man, whether you actually want to get well in the way I define it. Not by your own strategy, not by your own timeline, but by trusting the voice that has authority over water, over disease, over 38 years of disappointment. I know some of you are holding on to shame right now about how long this has taken. Maybe you feel like that man at the pool, decades in, watching everyone else's miracle happen, while yours keeps getting beaten to the water. I need you to release that shame right now. 38 years did not disqualify that man from a complete, instant healing the moment I spoke. However many years you've been waiting does not disqualify you either. My timing has never once been limited by how long the wait has already been. If this message has shifted something in you tonight, and I believe it has, I believe you are still here for a reason. I want to bring up the seed of faith one more time, because Emmett's story is the perfect place to talk about it. Consider sowing using the Super Thanks button below, not because it purchases anything, but because it declares something in the exact same posture Emmett's wife declared when she prayed in that hospital room before she had any good news to stand on. Someone who sowed during a season just like Emmett's unfolding, uncertain chapter later, told me that within that same week, the specialist's language shifted from cautious to hopeful, faster than anyone on the medical team expected. I cannot promise you the same specific timeline, because every story is its own story. But I can tell you that seeds sown in the middle of uncertainty, in faith rather than in certainty, have always been the seeds I honor most quickly, because that is exactly the kind of trust that moves my heart. You do not have to give tonight, but if there is a nudge in your spirit right now, don't dismiss it as coincidence. That nudge is exactly the same nudge Margarite felt when she prayed to not become bitter, exactly the same nudge Rutherford felt at his curb, exactly the same nudge Emmett's wife felt when she refused to leave that hospital room without praying first. Obedience to a small nudge has always unlocked what your own strength could never reach on its own. Type faith one more time in the comments if you are believing with me right now. For Emmett, for Margarite, still walking in her fuller healing. For Rutherford's daughter, who is out there somewhere right now probably narrating her entire afternoon out loud to anyone who will listen. And type it for yourself too, for whatever chapter you're currently living in, the instant one, the gradual one, or the still unfolding one. I told you earlier that there was something I had been keeping from you, and I told you I would tell you when the moment was right. This is that moment. Here it is, my child, and I want you to hear it exactly as I say it, without adding anything to it, and without taking anything away. The reason this video found you tonight, on the 20th of August, in the year 2026, was never about a punishment for skipping it. That fear you felt when you saw those words was never from me. It was the enemy trying to make you associate my voice with the same fear you'd run from a threat. But I turned that fear into an invitation the moment you stayed. What you would have missed, the real loss, the real thing you would have walked past, was not a punishment. It was this exact moment, right now, where you finally understand that whatever chapter of healing you're living in, instant, gradual, or still unfolding, I am already present in it. I have already been present in it, and I am not going anywhere until it's finished. That is the full weight of what this night was marked for. Not fear, revelation. The revelation that you were never the exception to my healing. You were the reason I set this date apart in the first place. Subscribe to this channel right now, my child, because I am not finished speaking to you. There will be more nights like this one, more words that arrive exactly when you need them, and I don't want you to miss the next one because an algorithm decided not to show it to you. Let your subscription be another small act of agreement, a way of saying, God, keep speaking, I'm listening now, and I intend to keep listening. Comment the number 111 one final time, and this time I want you to comment it as a declaration, not a question. Not 111, I hope this is for me, but 111, I know this was for me. There is a difference between hoping and knowing, and I have spent this entire message trying to move you from one to the other. Before I let you go tonight, I want to make one final ask, because I believe in being fully honest with you about everything, including this. If this message reached the deepest part of you tonight, if you felt Rutherford's desperation at that curb, if you felt Margarite's shaking hand over piano keys in month 6, if you felt the fear in that Duluth hospital room and the relief of a small, stubborn question about a football game, consider sowing one final seed of faith using the Super Thanks button before you close this video. This is not a fee for what you just received. What I give is always free, always by grace, never for sale. This is your response. Your way of saying that the movement you feel in your spirit right now is worth acting on immediately, not filing away as a nice feeling you'll forget by morning. Whatever you're able to give it as worship, not as payment, and watch what I do with even the smallest seed sown in faith. Now, my child, share this with that person who came to your mind earlier, if you haven't already. And comment "It is done" below this video one final time, as your declaration that you are leaving this moment different than you arrived, whether your healing is instant like Rutherford's, gradual like Margarite's, or still unfolding like Emmett's. I want you to remember something as you go back out into the rest of your night, back to the laundry, back to the phone, back to whatever was waiting for you before you turned the volume up. The date on this video, the 20th of August, 2026. The words that frightened you on the thumbnail. None of that was ever about punishment. It was always about this exact moment, where you finally believe that I am close to your broken-hearted places, the way Psalm 34:18 promised, that I give you the desires of your heart when you delight in me through the waiting, the way Psalm 37:4 promised, and that I am your refuge and fortress in the middle of the unfinished story, the way Psalm 91 promised. All three of those promises were written for tonight, for you, on this exact date, and now you know it. This is not goodbye. This is go, and I go with you, into the waiting room, into the therapy appointment, into the curb where you finally stop fighting me for control, into the 38 years, however long yours has already been, into the hospital hallway, into the piano bench, into whatever chapter of your healing you are currently living. I am not staying behind while you walk back into your life. I am walking with you, ahead of you, and beside you, all at the same time, the way only I can. Go now, my child. Go in peace, go in faith, and know, without a shadow of doubt, that I go with you.